It wasn't due to suicide. However, his life he had struggled so badly that I would almost attribute to the fact that he had gone through a really difficult time. Between drugs, between alcohol, between a lot of what we call in the Manhood Frequency book that I've written, the pain gates. He had a lot of pain. Hey guys, today I'm going to share a story that's happened to me recently. I think you're going to take heart to this. There's a lot of men out there struggling and dying, and this happened to me just yesterday. Got a text message, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, a friend of mine had said that a gentleman that I met back when I was 21 years old in 1986, 87, had told me that he had passed away. He was only 61 years old. It wasn't due to suicide. However, his life he had struggled so badly that I would almost attribute to the fact that he had gone through a really difficult time of his life and the constant struggles that he had between drugs, between alcohol, between a lot of what we call in the Manhood Frequency book that I've written, the pain gates. He had a lot of pain. Where did it stem from? I don't know. And where did he take it? Well, it was pretty obvious. He took it to his deathbed. I'm going to call him John. His name is something else. But I just want to share with you, I got a text from what I would consider to be practically his brother, one of his best friends. And it was shocking. I had seen him about a year ago. He looked good. Maybe 2 years ago, year and a half. He looked good. He was dating a new girlfriend. He had struggled all the time with finding that one woman that he could call, his one flesh. Never found it, and sadly, he left a son. And it's heartbreaking because I got to tell you, there is so much going on out there with men struggling. We men, we want to come across as so tough, so hard, but the reality is, many of us are struggling. This guy that, like I said, now there is some good news, silver lining of that. While I wouldn't consider him to ever have been a disciple of Christ, he definitely made Christ his Lord. Jesus Christ was his Lord. And we've talked about it. And he now's no more suffering, no more pain, had a massive heart attack. Organs were shutting down. It was a horrible last month, 2 months. But now he's in the arms of Christ and no more suffering. However, let's talk about this because there are a lot of men out there that are watching our program and they're facing, a fork in the road. They're facing potential death, either because of their lifestyle or because they're tired of living. And that is scary. I'll share another story with someone I know very, very well. We'll call him Jim. And Jim is someone that I've known since he was 16 years old. And Jim is successful in a lot of business. He's been in the medical industry. And currently he is struggling so badly that he had to move in with his parents. And at 50 years old, he's not sure whether he wants to live or not. He's at the point in his life where he says he does, but all indications say when you don't leave your house ever. He had some bad situations happen to him, met what I consider to be a Jezebel woman. If you read scripture and you know the story about King Ahab, Jezebel was pretty evil. So evil, in fact, that she made Elijah's life a living hell, if you recall. And there's a lot of situations like that. And then, of course, I'll go with my third story, and that was a friend of mine. I don't mind, he'll share his name, a guy who was an airborne ranger, Frank. I've known Frank for many, many years. And Frank was a rock star. Let me tell you guys, he is a freaking rock star when it comes to training airborne rangers. He was the elite, best of the best. And Frank, while not having any issues, because of his strength and his discipleship in God, his cornerstone is the Lord, he has had, you ready for this? Over 10 friends, 10 men in service who've already killed themselves. Now, why am I bringing all this up? Well, today is the first day of episode 1 of the book that I wrote back 4 years ago called The Manhood Frequency. And it's about men learning to live life on the right frequency versus the me frequency. How do we get there? How do we men get to the point in our lives we begin to live this life where we are so important that we have forgotten everyone else around us? And when this happens, nothing but bad things feed us. I was there. If you haven't read my book, I encourage you to check it out. It's on Amazon and all the major places you can buy it, or an audiobook. You can listen to it. And my wife and I narrated the book. We wrote the book together. And as most of you know who follow this program know that I was this far away from losing my wife and, of course, the respect of my children, my career, my income, because as she likes to jokingly say, it's okay, you'll have someplace to live. It'll be a trailer down in Mayport, Florida, where they have a bunch of boats where they shrimp. And as you can imagine, it's not the fanciest place in the world. I got to be honest with you, I was going to lose everything. And, and when I see men who have lost so much and they don't feel like they have a future, they're tempted to end it all. Now, men, that is one of the most selfish things you can do. Now, you might say, well, you don't understand how much I'm hurting. For you to say that it's selfish or I'm doing something wrong when I feel like the victim, that's unfair. Hear me out. Imagine for a moment you're at a funeral and you're sitting in a chair next to your friend, your wife, whomever, by yourself. And you know that this person has killed themselves, herself. Statistics tell us that 80%, CDC is a statement, that 80% of all suicides come from men. Now, I don't think you're surprised about that. The reality is most of the fighting force that we have sent over the last 30 years, whether it was the Gulf War that I served in, or whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq, the reality is most of them are men. And in the wartime, they go to fight on battle. Frank shared with me, 2 years ago, that he desperately wanted to help these men stop this before it was too late. When you've fought in a battle, and I've only served, the military during the Gulf War, but not in battle, and I can tell you that with the band of Brotherhood that I built up with my friends, if I was over there and I got injured, and got stationed back in the United States, first thing I'd try to probably do is get back myself. Now, you think that's crazy, especially you women are watching, go, why in God's name would a dude want to get back to there when he could be safe in the United States? And the reality is, Jesse Ventura said it. He was the, one of the top wrestlers, world wrestlers of all time. He also was governor of Minnesota, and he said, look, you over there, you become a man. Over here, sometimes you're just a child, especially when you're 19, 20, and you can't even buy a beer, for God's sake. It's ridiculous. You're over there, you're a man. You know that you've got men next to you giving your life, and that man dies in front of you. You feel that when you go back to the States, you're alive and he's dead. You feel like you should have died with him. And it kills you. It loads you with guilt. This is called what? We all know it. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So many men have it. So many of my friend Frank's brothers who he served with have it. Like I said, over 10 men have already committed suicide. Men, maybe you're not in that state and you're watching this program. You're like, dude, I don't plan to kill myself. Maybe you don't. But are you killing yourself in other ways? Are you living a life that maybe instead of pulling out a gun or tying a rope, you're killing yourself because you are so pained that you feel like, I don't care about anything. I don't care about my wife. I don't care about my kids. I don't care about my career. I don't care. All I care about is taking away the pain. Now, you might say, Hank, Did you really ever live like that? And I think I did. I can share with you that there was a lot of pride in my life, and I loved the fact of looking in the mirror as a competitive bodybuilder, lifting weights, being big, even just 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I did it all because I had lived through many painful events. I've never shared this, but I'll share this on screen today, that I was abused and molested by older boys when I was younger. I think it affected me. I tried to push it down, but then I was opened up to pornography. And while never interested in same sex, I definitely was interested in the opposite sex. And I was obsessed with that feeling of the flesh. You know, the Bible does talk about that. You know, and he talks about to flee youthful lust and to flee the flesh, because it is destructive. It will eat you alive. You know, look after the spirit, not after the flesh. The reality is, we're all fighting a war. When we go back to my buddies who have served from the Gulf War to Afghanistan to Iraq, you know, we human beings, we men, we're living a war. The Bible says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds and casting down all imaginations and thought that exalt themselves against the knowledge of God. And then what we're to do is bring into captivity every thought to the full obedience of Christ. Now, if you are a follower of God, if you're not, I hope you take some of this practical information and it resonates with you. If you're a person of faith, you believe there is a God and he sees you. And by the way, I do want to say this. God sees you. He knows you. He knows you by name. The Bible even says he knows every hair on your head, which is incredible. I want to share this with you, that God knows you. He knows you intimately, and he loves you. And he doesn't want you to live life on a me frequency, where you're constantly, because of the pain you've lived in your life, you're constantly feeding this flesh, saying, you know, it's going to go away. I don't have to worry about it, because if I can just numb the pain with the flesh, everything will be fine. But that's not how we were built. You know, this week I have a Wednesday men's group that I was invited to, and I've been so blessed to be a part of it. I even struggle sometimes thinking, hey, I'm getting ready to turn 60 years old. I should know enough by now that I don't really need any man's help, right? Well, I can tell you that I'm about to turn 60. And in my book, The One Day Gift, I call it the fourth quarter of life, the coaching years. But the reality is, I need to be coached. So I decided a few weeks back, literally just a few weeks, to join another church's discipleship group, men's group. And I have been so blessed to be a part of another group of men. By the way, if you're at a church and they have a men's group discipleship, be a part of it. If nothing else, grab the coffee with the guys and just listen. It will bless you. So yesterday, we all sat around, we got there, and we were talking about, once again, King Ahab and his wicked wife Jezebel, who wanted to destroy anything that had to do with godliness. You probably know some Jezebels out there, I'm sure you do. And all of a sudden, I had a word picture. I don't know if it's a word picture or picture that I wanted to share in words. And after the leader of the group finished what he was saying, I said, hey guys, you know, I almost want to give an example of what I think we're all going through here. And one other man, he was younger than us, probably in his late 40s. He's been sharing recently about so many people in his life that he knows, that he's surrounded with, that have committed suicide. And he's the one who said, it's so selfish to do that. As we go back to that story where I was telling about the funeral, and you know that individual gave up on life, as you can imagine, it makes it very uncomfortable to be in a room. Now, we all want to believe and hope that that person had peace with God. And by the way, God can come to people even in the midst of the twilight of life and eternity. He can speak to them. You've heard of everyone, I'm sure, watching this has seen NDEs, near-death experiences, and how that person heard something from early in their life and came back to God. It's to go to a funeral and see that, it's probably the worst pain. And then you see the people affected by that, especially if you have a young man whose wife is sitting there with little children and she's left to fend for all of them because he just decided to take a different way out of his life. It's happening, and it breaks my heart. But men, I want to make sure that together we can stop this. This picture, this mind picture that I had, I said, what I see, guys, for most of us, is that at some point we came to faith because we were standing face to face with God, and we recognized that we needed him. And Jesus gave us that proverbial, wrapped his arms around and hugged us. Some of you have seen that picture that was drawn many years ago, and it's such a beautiful picture where you see the face of Jesus just with tears coming down his eyes as he's hugging the actual brother, the man who's got his back to the image. And you see the love God has for this person. And I said, that's the excitement you feel and the passion and the hope you feel when you come to know God, know Christ, through Christ Jesus. But through our pains, we begin to pull away from God. And it's like you're talking to him, but you're stepping further and further back. And God continues to talk to you. Christ continues to talk to you. He never screams. He never yells. He never loses his peace or his patience. He's there talking. But the further back you step, further and further and further, the less you hear him, the less you hear his voice. And the further back you go, and here's the sad part, most men would blame God for leaving them. But the reality is we're stepping further and further away, all the time screaming out, can't you hear me? Can't you hear what I'm saying? I'm trying to get your attention. And the whole time, Jesus is standing in his one spot and he's talking to you. Men, the best thing I can share with you today is this. If you truly want to leave the me frequency and go on God's frequency, we call it around here at the Manhood frequency, the he frequency. You got the me and you got the he. Most of you have lived the me and it ain't worked too well for you. I did it. Almost lost everything. I chose to go on the he. Remember those old radio dials where you rated the dial down and the red line went back and forth? I've decided I'm not living on the me anymore, I'm living on the he. And it's changed my life. Because it ain't about us, guys. We're not on this earth to be glorified. We're to glorify him. And if we do, he may decide to honor us. But it's not about our honor, it's about his glory. What's the key? The key is to begin to step forward and get closer and closer to him. He said, if you would abide in me and my words abide in you, then you can ask the Father anything. And according to his will, he can give it to you. Here's the thing. If you are far away from God, you might be asking those things that aren't valuable and don't mean much. And it's almost as if, not exactly, but it almost makes me feel like, it's my personal opinion, that you're asking for things that God can't hear because the reality is they aren't good for you. But as you get closer and closer and closer and you become more intimate with God, then all of a sudden you begin to feel his presence. You get to feel the energy, the vibration of the power of God that's coming from the Lord. And you become to get in sync with him. It's like that, working together in sync. And soon you begin to think like him. So the things you're asking for aren't what you used to. His ways become your ways. His thoughts become your thoughts. And you begin to live like that. You live on the heat frequency. So men, I know a lot of you are struggling out there. A lot of you are in pain. A lot of you are trying to numb that pain with alcohol, with drugs, with women, with pornography, with just, we could go on, right? But the reality is, men, the only way we're going to be set free from fear of dying, for fear of being alone, is to walk towards God, to walk towards that intimacy. I'll leave you with a story. A couple weeks ago when I started with this men's group, we went around the table and they were introducing me because I was the new guy. And the one guy says, "I'm Frank." I said, "Hey, I'm Hank." And some guy yelled out laughingly, "Hey, that's like Hans and Franz from the old 80s. And as I passed Frank, he stood up and he said, "Hank? Hank Groff?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's me, Frank Markowski." Now, when I got stationed in the Navy in 1986, Frank and I were in the same division at the base, the Mayport Naval Station here in Jacksonville, Florida. I hadn't seen Frank in probably 25 years. And like me, he also got older and his face got a little more wrinkled. Still looked fantastic because he was into yoga and staying very fit. But what was sad was Frank was hurting. He was going through a tough time. And, you know, this is a man who once again served his country. And I looked at him, me being through my own dark times of life, the valley, as we like to call it, the valley of the shadow of death, like the Bible talks about in Psalms 23. And I said, "Hey, Frank, I'm your brother. You remember that. You've known each other for, I think it's been almost 40 years. And I said, you're not alone, my man. I'm here for you. I will be here." So I'm going to put the challenge out to you men. Men, are you only like, sadly, those who commit suicide and take on that most selfish act? Are you so obsessed with yourself that you only think about the problems you're going through, the frustrations and the loneliness? Listen, reach out to a man who can be there for you. And if you're the man who's busy in his life, go find a man who needs to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and hear the answer that you have. The reality is, men, we're not going to become successful. We're not going to be warriors, as we like to call it at our nonprofit movement, TMF-Warrior, if we don't fight for our brother. So today I encourage you to do that. Remember, subscribe to our channel, both channels that I have, both my own, Hank Groff, and TMF-Warrior. Like it, subscribe, pass it around to others. I think you guys probably know 5, 10 friends that need to live life on the right frequency. So until next time, we'll see you on episode 2. What's to come? It's going to be exciting. Don't miss it. We'll see you soon.